everyone, it's Hayes, and in today's video we're going through the commentary / analysis, whatever episode number this was, the Chain Titans. I think it's 21, but I'm not completely confident about that. Anyway, like always, I'm about to spoil the full thing, so please go and watch it before you watch the rest of this video. And overall, I would give this episode an 8 out of 10. If you don't know, my parents are divorced, so me and my 3 brothers, we all have the exact same mum and dad. My parents are divorced, so I know not everyone watching this episode will be the child of divorced parents, but I am. And by and large, I do think they handled the discussion around divorce, particularly for children, really well. I thought it was a good way to discuss it, and I liked the conclusion they reached in that they were going to get divorced. I honestly think that's what Nina's parents needed. I'm glad it wasn't resolved with them staying together and basically trying to work through it, but in my opinion, I think we actually needed more of Nino's parents, considering this episode is about them. We don't actually see them a great deal, and I also really think it could have benefited from us seeing the moment they got akumatized. I felt that was missing from the episode, and also Chris seemed a bit missing. I know I don't like him, but you know, he is a huge part of that family, so it seemed a bit odd he wasn't there. But I'll talk about it more as we go on. I loved the Adrian and Marinette stuff with the superheroes. We got to use the turtle and the fox. I've already forgot the names. Was it Renardette's? And I've forgotten Adrian's. Began with a T. Loved it. I'm going to do a whole analysis on their outfits in separate videos, but for now, gorgeous. Thought they looked amazing. But I also think the episode could have benefited from a little bit more Alia, and the next thing you're going to say is Hayes. Well, it was already full of other things. Where could we have put that in? There are some things we didn't need. So for example, I love the opening where it's set in the past, like 14, 15 years ago. Has anyone had a birthday that we don't know of? I don't know. And it sets up Nino's parents showing them not arguing but already disagreeing about what they want for their lives. Nino's mum, whose name I'm not sure of because I couldn't read the jar. That was illegible to me. What are those names? I don't know. Who wrote that? But Nino's mum, she's very much a homebody. She's like, I want to stay here, I want to have a nice house, I want to have a lovely garden with an orchard. Nino's dad's like, let's go travelling, let's go everywhere. It's gonna be amazing. Which is fine to want those two things, but obviously they already had a massive difference of opinion, but they're not arguing about it. And then honestly, I think we could have just cut directly after the theme tune, cut directly back to Nino waking up and his parents are already arguing. I understood they had Marinette with her family, Adrian with his family, and which was super cute with Natalie with the mandolins, and then Ali with her family, showing how peaceful and calm and nice their family environments are. Direct contrast to how argumentative Nino's is. However, I feel that the opening scene was enough of a contrast to it, so I don't really think you needed all those extra things. They were cute, don't get me wrong. Adrian's got a new pair of gym jams. Got to see Nino's pyjamas too, and his bedroom. I'm always down for a new set. I'm really intrigued to find out where all the kids live and what their family dynamics are like. But I just don't think we needed all of those, because the scene with Nino's parents arguing and the opening scene with them was already contrast. You can see how things have changed. They're still disagreeing on things, but now it's elevating. Like Adrian and Marinette later on, talking about the hamster stuff. You know, there's a difference between arguing and discussing. For example, if you ever disagree with something I say in my videos, feel free to discuss it with me in the comments, but I'm not going to argue with you. If you're going to come up and be rude, start shouting, start calling me names, start being rude, I just won't engage with you and I'll just delete the comment. I'm down for a discussion, but I'm not down for an argument. So obviously their dynamic has elevated from discussing it and disagreeing and arguing and disagreeing. I really don't think you needed the other parents in. They're into contrast, but oh my god, it's been like 14 years and you still haven't spent this money. The self-control they have, that would have been gone. Absolutely not. But oh my god, right, so in Fairy Goodnight, Max, you know, very expertly puts that jam on his toast or bread or whatever it was. Chris has the exact same amount of jam on. They are thick with jam in this show, crikey. It's a lot of jam. It's a lot of sugar. The scene on the tram was only very short, but I really liked it, and maybe it's just because of the kind of episode it was, but Chris seemed much more well adjusted compared to the last time we'd seen him. He didn't come across as half as annoying in this episode, but he literally only has like 3 lines. So then we get to the greenhouse. I love this scene, so sweet with both, first of all, Ways and Tricks. I love Kwame interaction, we don't get much of it after season 4. And also the Alia and Nino stuff. They are so cute together. I love them so much as a couple. And then we go to the cafeteria with the hamster. And honestly, I love that they're discussing the hamster name. I know we all want to know what the hamster's going to be called in the future. I'm not so sure on the composer names though. I don't think that's the right route to go down. I'm not sure what the correct route is, but I don't think that's what we should be going. Why do you name them after pastries? That'd be cool. Pastries. Like, I'm always down for calling animals like human names. Something fun. Like, for example, if any of you have read Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinnerman, the cat in that, he's like the second main character, she's called Princess Donut. I'm always down for like a fun non-human name for an animal. Either that or something like extremely human, like calling a dog Alfred or something super posh, you know what I mean? It's like one extreme or the other, nothing like a normal name. My cats are called Luke and Leia after Star Wars, so that's the kind of theme I like to go down. And I loved Nino's concern for them, obviously elevated by what happened to his parents. I'm like, Marinette and Adrian are going to get divorced, and Ali's like, they are 14 years old, Nino, they are not married. So then they transform after Nino calls her, which is cool because it literally just seems like he just says Ladybug really loudly into his bracelet, which just calls her, so you know. So Ladybug goes to transform in the toilets, which first of all, after she's transformed, how does she get out of there without anyone seeing it? It's like a little window in the bathrooms. You know, I'd just be a bit like, oh, there's Ladybug leaving the school toilets. I guess she must go to school here. But then she also has a GPS with them on, which, very handy. Is the butterfly not on there? Is it just like, oh, if that Miraculous is in my contact book, I can see where they are? I am assuming that's a new thing. However, I was just a bit baffled when she was like, so, right, I understand Nino's plan. I get it. I think it was a very sweet plan. But with Marinette, where they were just like suggesting like, hey, we think we should have stand-ins, and she's like, yeah, sure, you can give your Miraculous out to other people as long as they're who I know. I was like, no! Crazy lady, no! But I did love how Nino talked about his friends in this scene, about Adrian and Marinette, and the compliments he was giving them. He was super sweet, and I really honestly identify with how attached Nino is to his friends. As someone, like I said, who is a child of divorced parents, I was very attached to my friends in primary school. I was friends with these 3 other girls, and at the end of primary school, me and one girl were going to the same high school, the other 2 girls were going to a different high school. To say I was distraught when I found out, I didn't know I was autistic at the time, by the way. I was absolutely distraught when I found out we weren't going to be, you know, the same core full moving into high school together, just gonna be me and this other girl. And don't get me wrong, I loved her to bits, but it wasn't going to be the 4 of us. I was absolutely distraught. So at 10 years old, last day of primary school, my heart was absolutely broken. Same way leaving high school, I really valued my friends. So I really understand where Nino's coming from. I also really love the scene between Alia and Marinette in the lecture theatre, and then we go to Adrian where he's just like, oh, we're a superhero, oh, I don't know about that, and then Plag's like, excellent. I sure hope nobody was in the locker room for that conversation. So then they take them to the metro station. I'm like, Miss Bustier, what kind of public funds did she find in surplus that she's like, yeah, I can remodel this metro station for you, I can do that. Off the books, of course, but we can get it done. But like, all there is some like massive tyres and lockers in the metro station. What does she do? And I love Marinette and Adrian in the scene. They're both like just pretending to be stupid as if they've never met these Kwamis before. Like, yeah, what do I do? Because Marinette, when she says tricks transforme-moi, she's like, transforme-moi? As if I have never said this before. It's not like I say it like 3 or 4 times a day depending on what's going on in this city. Excellent. That was so funny. And then the outfits, like I said, I'm gonna do a whole video on them, but I think they looked amazing, both of them, especially Adrian's hair and Marinette's hair. Marinette always has amazing hair. She looks so good. And I loved seeing them together, just getting to run around Paris on the rooftop, just being together. It would look so much fun, but as much as I liked the fighting they did, or fighting, more of the defence they did when the Akuma started, I really wish we got to have seen them actually fight the Chain Titans together. Honestly, they weren't really a super like violent Akuma villain like we've had previously, so maybe this wasn't the right episode for it, but I really want to see what that dynamic would be like if they're aware who the other person is. Like I said in my theory video, is Marinette still going to take charge? Will she be a bit kind of nervous around Adrian? Marinette as Ladybug and Marinette around Adrian are still 2 very different people a lot of the time. So what's going to happen there? I'm not really sure. Would Adrian be like, no, this is my girlfriend, I love her very much, I need to protect her at all costs, going even further than Cat Noir was? Like, Cat Noir in general, I would say he's quite self-sacrificial. So would he be even more so if he knows that Marinette is Ladybug? I don't know. So obviously this wasn't really the episode for it, since, I mean, they were destructive, but they weren't particularly, you know, violent, going around punching people or whatever. So I would like to see it in a future episode. So then I think they make the right decision by giving up the Miraculous so they can use their own. Right. And then we get on to Ladybug and Cat Noir arriving. First of all, I loved that it wasn't easily as solved as Cat Noir cataclysming the money jar. And then just ending. I liked that they basically regrew because they couldn't get over what had caused their Akuma in the first place just from doing that. And I love the solution that they basically had to unhook each other. Loved that idea. However, I feel this Akuma would have been much more effective if we'd seen the moment where they both got Akumatized, because it seems like they're not even together. So they start the episode at home together. Nino's dad takes Nino and Chris partway to school. I would imagine he gets off the tram to go wherever it is that he works, I don't know. And it seems Nino's mum maybe works from home / works somewhere in a different direction. So as far as I'm aware, I definitely could be wrong, but as far as I'm aware from what we were shown in that episode, they're not even together when the Akuma happens. I'm like, what happened? I was thinking maybe this is just a solution, maybe not the solution, but just, I don't like giving feedback without giving something they could have done instead. I'm not saying they had to have done this, but perhaps Chris, because he's had that bad morning, he maybe doesn't feel so great, so his school or whatever call his parents, come and pick him up, say hey, he's come get Chris. His mum arrives first and then his dad does. They end up arguing about what's best for Chris and they end up getting Akumatized. I think that would have been really powerful, and at that point Chris could have called Nino. It seemed in this situation that Chris really relies on Nino for moral support with family stuff, which obviously makes sense, that's his older brother. As a younger sister, I have an older brother. If anything was going on with mum when I was a child, I go to my older brother first, and failing him, my grandma, and failing him, just try and sort it out myself. That's what you gotta do when you're the child of divorced parents. Just gotta sort things out yourself when there isn't another adult around to help you. And whilst I found it funny that, so they cast the shelter on the jar to keep it on the ground so they'd have to turn around and try and solve this. I did find it funny that they both just turn around, and because I understand they're statues but they have no emotion, they just turn around and like, what are we gonna do about this? I don't know. I thought it was fun, and I understand in one way that they were silent because the whole issue Nina's parents has was around communication and then not being able to compromise with each other on their wishes and desires and things. So I understand it on that level, but I just don't feel, considering how much they were arguing in that opening scene after the credits, I just don't think they were at a place in their relationship that they could just suddenly decide to help each other like this when there was nothing really at stake. I think perhaps if Alia had been there, who I really felt honestly was missing from the Akuma, I was a bit confused about the decision not to have her there. I really think maybe Alia could have cast an illusion of the shelter so they couldn't move, and then Nino could de-transform and he and Chris could come forward and talk to their parents. Now I'm not saying they had to solve the situation, because I really like the quote where Nino says it's they're the only ones who can escape their chains. I love the idea that it's not up to your children in a divorce to sort out their parents. Of course not, absolutely not. However, you can't tell their thoughts and emotions in that moment because they can't talk, and they also can't see anything on their faces either. And I also felt it was really important to more show the effect that these arguments their parents are having, what effect it's having on their children. A lot of people don't think about it. A lot of adults, when they're in relationships like this, if they have children together, they often don't think about the effects it has on their children. So by having Nino and Chris, not to give a solution to their parents, maybe just in the moment be like, hey, the way you're acting towards each other around the two of us is absolutely horrible. You need to stop, this is affecting us really badly, which would have been amplified more so if Chris was sent home because he was too upset rather than being, you know, physically ill, he had a tummy ache, hurt himself, whatever. If he was needed to go home due to mental health, due to the way his parents were, I think that would have just been a more effective follow through. So I love the idea of it, and then eventually helping each other and walking away from each other at the end of it. So I love the symbolism behind it, but I just don't think it was enough considering the relationship they have and we're shown they have after the opening credits, the opening theme tune. You know what I mean? I hope I've communicated that properly. It just seems a bit much for me to expect that they would help each other when it seems quite evident from the opening that perhaps hate is a too strong a word, but I would definitely say they do strongly dislike each other at this point in their marriage. So I like the idea of the Akuma, I love the concept of it, but I just think it needed a little bit more to elevate it a bit more. Although, like I said, I am glad they got divorced, which sounds like a horrible thing to say, but I think they would just do better apart. Some parents do better apart than they do together. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. I guess as well my parents are also better apart than they are together, but not my dad. If you've been around long enough, a lot of you will know I don't have a relationship with my dad. The last time I spoke to him was when I was 13. I'm going to be 30 this year. Haven't spoken to him for over half of my life now, and I am fine without him. Always have been, always will be. But that's just my opinion. I'm not saying if your parents get divorced you should stop talking to one of them. That is just something in my family. And now onto the end scene between Ladybug and Cat Noir. And I felt it was a little bit odd because Adrian reached the conclusion like of I'm like, I'm not really sure I want to do that, which is fine, he doesn't have to have a stand-in. But it did seem odd that he didn't maybe give it a bit more thought, or maybe end the episode turning up at Nino's if he wasn't gonna maybe follow through that a bit more. And it just seems a little bit strange of an end scene to finish with if he wasn't gonna tell Nino. I'm not saying it has to be Nino, it could have been someone else. My next natural choice for it would be Luca, but Luca isn't in the, it's not even in the continent, let alone the country. I think he would be great with the cat Miraculous. But it seemed like the way the episode was going is that, oh, we're gonna go for Nino. It's like Marinette and Alio swap Miraculous. Nino has now given Adrian his, so to complete the square, we used to go Adrian to Nino, but it just kind of was more like a question mark. So I don't know if perhaps they're saving that for another episode, although we've only got like 4 left. I'm pretty sure, was it the Dirtifiers? Is that going to be the Mark episode? Or are they kind of going with the ruler? A bit like Vampigami, where the ruler is Mark and Nathaniel and Vampigami is Rose and Julica. Or is it going to be like, is the Dirtifiers going to be like another Adrian and Marinette episode? I don't know. But overall, I did like it. I did like the concept of the episode, and I thought they did talk about divorce in a good way for children. I had, at least not that I was aware of at the time, I was a child, like I was 7 years old when my parents split up. I'm pretty sure there was no media at the time, at least that I was aware of anyway, that dealt with divorces for children. As in not children getting divorced, as in children whose parents were getting divorced. So I wish I had this at the time. I was very much like, what's going on? I didn't know, I was 7. So I would give it an 8 out of 10, and the MVP, of course, was Nino. He was going through a lot in this episode, but I thought he handled it really, really well. So yeah, pretty good episode. I just think it needed some improvements here and there. But anyway, besties, I'd love to know what the rest of you thought of this episode. Of course, if you're going to leave me a super long comment, that's fine, but please break it into paragraphs so it's a bit easier for me to read because I have terrible eyesight. And it's totally okay if you disagree with me. I just want to know what your opinion is. Like I said, I'm down for a discussion, not an argument. So let's know what the rest of you think, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!